I thought, Danny,
Welcome to the Super Saturday. We got some Superversives here, and we're going to talk about Comicsgate, blacklisting, and more. I'm here with Daddy Warpig, El Jaji Lamplighter, the Evil Cow, and Nate Winchester. The second he wrangles
La
his...
Vaca, Lavada.
Okay. La Vaca Lavada. And Nate Winchester, the second he can wrangle his microphone. How are you guys doing today?
I just hear Nevada. That's all I hear
Good.
when I hear that name is Nevada. La Vaca, Nevada. And I'm like...
No, it's La Vaca, Lavada.
I know that's not...
La Vaca, Nevada.
It does sound a bit like Nevada.
La.
La Vaca, Nevada does sound like kind of a cool name also. So
I'm like,
either
Boca
way.
Raton, Nevada.
And it's really more with a B sound than a V sound. It's more like Baca. Really Cow's more like Baca, but it's with a V, so it's kind of in between B and V sound. And then the other part's Malvaca or Vavada. You know, Evil Cow in Spanish, basically.
I had the YouTube
That is my
video.
Evil League of Evil name.
She's officially joined the Evil League of Evil Authors.
I had the YouTube video playing, so I had 4 people talking
I have been slammed. You gotta mute it when you have it playing. Yeah, Jaji and I have both joined the ranks of the Evil League of Evil for different reasons. There's no turning back from this.
Yes.
We're here to stay.
It is sad in a way.
A new blacklist has come out, and their names are on it, and mine aren't. I'm just going to sit here thinking up some
I'm
new
not on
thing
it.
to do.
No?
Jaji's on it.
Who has been added to it?
Michael Z. Williamson, Larry Correa, El Jaji Lamplighter, and these are people who are writers who are not at all connected with Comicsgate.
Sorry.
And supposedly this is a blacklist that anti-Comicsgate people have put together of bad thinkers who are ruining comics, whatever. And it's got all the people who are supposed to be there, and they're just some other people that you're like... Well,
so I was on it.
Yeah. What the hell does
And Megan Fox, the reporter, was on it. And Jordan B. Peterson was on it.
See, Megan Fox...
He isn't even a fiction writer or related to us in any way, except that Fox complains about him. I mean, it's like...
Jordan B. Peterson...
philosophy.
Jordan B. Peterson's book was illustrated by Ethan Van Sciver.
Oh, good point. You're right. You're right.
Megan Fox writes on the Federalist, and she's written several news stories about the controversy, the Comicsgate thing.
I think I know why I'm on there. And I just a guess, but it is that I have exchanged a number of... I commented on tweets of these guys once or twice. So I'm just assuming that somebody was looking down on Twitter and saw my name in response to some silly comment I made back to some Comicsgate guys and decided I was part of it. I guess the other possibility is that I have...
Now, you know what would have been really funny?
Their Kickstarters on Superversive SF. Maybe they looked at me as the signal booster and thought I was, part of it or something. I mean, it's not like I would mind being part of it, but I'm not. It's just strange. But...
What would have been really funny is, since they were just kind of name grabbing, if they had accidentally gotten someone who's like on their side but was commenting on something.
There's actually
It'd be funny if someone got mixed up in it who wasn't actually.
There's a mockery version that somebody put out there, like a takeoff thing. That's a second list where my name is spelled incorrectly, and it has like Will Wheaton and a bunch of liberals stuck in on it too. I thought that was funny.
Reminds me of the days when they were just rolling out the block lists of like the automatic systems that would block bad thinkers, and like they would end up blocking each other because it turned out someone who considered such and such a bad thinker and thus deserving to be blocked was followed by one of their friends. And so it was a ever shrinking pool of people because it would also block the friends of friends of friends. And it ended up like where very briefly like everyone was blocked from each other's.
That's very funny. It makes sense, but it makes
Twitter must have been quiet.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I just been thinking
That
about
must
it.
have
And
been
I
the
can't
quietest
think of
24 hours on Twitter ever.
any connection between you and anything in Comicsgate. I mean, even like peripherally.
With me, the only things are that I've signal boosted them and I've commented them on Twitter. That's the only thing. I mean, John has a work that they're turning into a comic, but he was not listed. And that was the first thing. It was like looking at him like, John's not there, but I'm there. It just seems so strange. And it was after I thought about it, so okay, maybe they got it from like my comments on Twitter or something. But I'm not, actually involved in it in any way. It was just really odd. And the funniest thing about it for me is, so I get this thing and I'm blacklisted and I'm kind of chuckling over it. And the list of people who are complaining they're not on it is growing. Like it's it did first 2 and then 4 and then 10 and it is like everybody I read it to is complaining that their John was sad he wasn't on there. Tom Kratman was really sad he wasn't on there. Jason was really sad. Rennie was really sad he wasn't on there. And it just keeps growing with the people like, how do I get on the list? And then somebody bought one of my books because I was on it. They're like, oh, I should buy one, and they were talking to my typesetter. He's like, oh yeah, here's a link, and the guy's like, okay, I bought the first one. I was like, cool. I've been blacklisted, and my sales have gone up.
So I think that's John Del Rosa's
the mark
entire
of
marketing
conservative authors
strategy.
now is the fact that like.
I think you're right that is the John Del Rose.
It's sort of like a rite of passing for conservative authors to be blacklisted or cast out in some larger groups.
It
works out well for us. Because I know when, shifting gears for a second, when the Crack.com article came out and my story was the first one being bashed, I woke up to like a bunch of congratulations from everyone. Everyone was messaging me being like, congrats.
See, that's not fair. I got bashed by BuzzFeed this year, and I didn't get anybody congratulating me. I got a lot of nut bars in my mentions on Twitter, but
really, oh, that's a shame.
I was on BuzzFeed. It was awesome.
That is awesome. I don't know if I knew about that. I would have said congratulations.
Public enemy number 1 on
I should
BuzzFeed.
say the first time this ever happened was when John got bashed by the guy Damian Walter of The Guardian.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
The Guardian's Village Idiot.
Yeah, and my first reaction was, oh, cool, my husband's been mentioned in The Guardian. Years ago, The Guardian used to be a good paper. It was a paper my dad really admired, and they just kind of fell apart. But, I just thought it was really cool, But I think, part of it is that it's just so hard to get any publicity nowadays that just getting our name out there is nice. And whenever one of the sides bashes someone, the guys on the other side tend to go, oh, that might be somebody I need to support.
See,
yeah.
And it kind of turns...
And those tend to be the people that like our stuff.
It touches on something that was, a raging fire, a raging inferno in the email thread about this show that apparently isn't going to make the jump because half the people decided they didn't want to come on the air and defend their position with honor about boycotts and stuff. About boycotting things from the other side or buying things from, quote unquote, your side. I think that's an interesting conversation we could have because...
Well, I think so too, and I think it does. Boycotts are a funny thing. So there's a boycott on tour that I think is still on, but the problem with it is that the people involved in the people who are not part of the boycott buy most of the tour type things, and the people involved in the boycott are the people who would otherwise have been buying John's books. So the boycott has probably hurt John more than any specific other author. He was
I made an exception for John's books. Don't you worry.
A lot of other people do, or they say that some people buy Muse and they send us a little donation, which I think is really sweet. But But I'm just saying, I thought it was kind of funny, you know. But other times, I know that, you know, you hear about boycotts that really do something. But I guess the moral issue becomes, what anytime you want to do a boycott, but the number of people involved are relatively small, are you doing anything other than just, you know, kicking yourself if you're not buying something? Is it worth it if there aren't a large group of people? And I don't know. I think it's an interesting subject. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it.
I think that there are way too many things that have come out and done offensive things for me to keep a list of them. And I have, this is my conclusion about boycotts. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying they don't work. And I understand the position that you shouldn't give money to people who hate you. I understand all that. But you just don't have the headspace to memorize a list of 100 different companies that have done bad things or supported bad things. Like Intel gave $300 million to a feminist organization and money to Anita Sarkeesian. So fine. Does that mean you're going to boycott Intel processors? You're never going to buy a Macintosh or an IBM compatible PC again? It's practically impossible to keep up on all these things, and you don't have the headspace to remember all of them. And as soon as I found myself thinking at one point, I need to put together a spreadsheet of all the things I'm not going to buy, that was kind of the stopping point for me. I said, you know what? I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. It's unhealthy.
Go live in the woods and make your own stuff.
Go ahead, April.
So, let's see. I probably have a few thoughts on this because I'm kind of torn on it because on one hand, like I want to be able to, I'd like to be able to do business without political things coming into it. Like I'd rather, like, you might think something, like one company might think something, but like be able to do business and not have to only buy things from people that think the way you do. But at the same time, there's certain, like, I don't want to give to an organization that donates a lot of money to like abortions or something, or the kind of philosophy for, maybe you maybe not have to detail every single thing, but in general, like, I don't know, people, like, you don't want to give money to people that hate you. And so I haven't quite found my balance on it yet. But then, and see, I wish I could live in a world where people could more easily do business and get along without constantly attacking one set of customers because of politics or stuff like that. I wish the world was like that, but right now we're in sort of a culture war, and so it's kind of... Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, so I know that part of the problem is the activists on the left, because let's take a look at YouTube, okay? So what happened with YouTube? Well, YouTube has been deplatformizing, is that a word? People
demonetizing
on the right. Why? Because their sponsors started pulling out. Why? Because people on the left started writing the sponsors and saying, I saw your ad on such and such. Are you really supporting such and such? Oh my God, I'm never going to do business with you again. So the left guys, and I mean, you know, the not every liberal, I'm talking about the specific group that is politically targeting people, goes out and makes a huge fuss, and the companies respond the way they used to years ago, when people would make a fuss and they would try to do the thing that the customer wanted, and they haven't caught on to the fact that they're stuck between two sides. They just a whole bunch of customers don't like this, so they pull back, and then suddenly it's the other side. But I don't think the other side is as organized in writing and making a fuss and responding the way that the one side is. So
the difficulty is that there is something even worse going on. The SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, has a direct line to people at MasterCard, at Slice,
Yeah.
at Twitter, at YouTube, at Facebook, and they make a list of who they consider hate groups, which is basically anybody who's conservative.
Yeah.
And when they call somebody a terrorist or whatever, then all of these other companies, a huge group of tech companies, kick people off their site. I mean,
Yeah.
MasterCard has started kicking people off for political reasons, payment processors, and you see coordinated bans across multiple platforms on the exact same day. There is some collusion going on somewhere. I don't know who it is or where.
Definitely, and some of it's just in the open like that. And while over a period of 10 or 20 years, you may have a thing where some bank may come up and replace something else, and in the short term, there's nothing we can that a person who gets attacked this way can do.
Besides,
it's gonna have to go down to lawsuits, because when you just suddenly turn and kick somebody off when they haven't broken anything on their side of the contract, that's the kind of thing that contracts are supposed to protect against,
Yeah. And that's the thing about being in the culture war, is that side's doing it. And so, like, yeah, what can we do? How do we fight back against it? Like, certain boycotts work, some boycotts, I don't know. It kind of depends, I think, but we definitely can't just sit down and take it. We have to try and call out when it's unfairly.
Here's the colossal difficulty: is the philosophy, which is otherwise correct, the free market philosophy that a competitor will sooner or later spring up, is correct. It glosses over people who support that philosophy heavily and quote it all the time, gloss over a lot of the difficulties of actually becoming a competitor. How long it took Amazon, for example, to become a competitor. So how long would it take a competitor to Amazon? But where it falls down, where it really, really falls down, is it presumes that irrational behavior on part of one actor is just that one actor. And so if you're starting a new company, and we'll use Gab as an example because it's a perfect example. Gab, in order to grow up and become a competitor in the social media sphere, is being attacked from all over. The entire economy surrounding them and being able to get money is against them for political reasons. And so they can't get people to pay them money because of certain things. This happened also to, I think, Freestarter, who got completely destroyed. If you have... It's a nice theory to have competitors spring up, but if the competitors simply can't function in the economy, that raises the bar to, okay, now we need to regrow an entire economy, an entire alternate economy, and that is just, I see that as an insurmountable problem. I don't know what a solution is, but that is not a solution. Saying the free market will take care of it is like, well, they're being cut out of the market entirely.
Yeah. And it is true. Well, here's the thing. So it is true that given time, maybe an entire new market could develop, but that's apartheid. That's segregation. And that's something that we know historically is bad on completely other grounds, and we don't want that either. So it's a really difficult thing.
Well, I view it as difficult, partially because, for myself, and I don't know how true this is for other people. I don't really have good business sense, and all this other thing. So like even if I want to say, I don't know, create the conservative bookshop or conservative comic shop, I know from experience that those things. At some point in time, Anthony's probably going to challenge you to a dual daddy war pick. I'm just going to warn you about it right now. But like
it's happened before.
That's fine. I'll be either side second. I don't know what side either of you have. Is that like I know that from prior experience with some of the projects I've had before, I'll probably fail it, and I don't know how Like, I don't understand like the transition that people have between like fail, 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 success versus other things. The only thing I've ever really been successful at in a business sense is my writing. And even then, I only just got $33 for my first novel, so I'm real excited. I tithed all that stuff, first fruits, baby. But all this infrastructure, how do we fork? That is to say, create a branch off from MasterCard.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the scale that would take.
And you do have to have, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, let's go out and, try to do something we can do ourselves, but certain things we cannot do ourselves. As you say, most of us are not equipped to be bankers. And if we were, that would be nice, but we're not, and then you have a situation where there's sometimes there's laws that are stacked in favor of existing companies because they've lobbied to get them.
Yeah.
And that if we were being shut down for anything related to race or gender, we would have no trouble being able to defend ourselves right now in America. But for this, they're trying to. I don't know.
It's an odd place to be.
I was thinking about this earlier that I think they've really mastered a divide and conquer strategy, because it occurred to me today. I was playing over some stuff in my head and I realized that I'd heard 3 different authors all complain about how conservatives make no effort to take back the culture, and all 3 authors never mentioned each other, even though they're all 3 like doing the same effort and trying to make the same attempt. And I thought, well, if all 3 of those guys could like promote each other, that would probably help all their efforts. But A doesn't know about B, doesn't know about C, and that certainly exacerbates the problem.
Well, even though we've moved a lot, the chunk has moved to MeWe, the group CFLA, and stuff like that. That's definitely a big help for fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from having gone through Sad Puppies that the problem is not the right not taking back the culture. The problem is that a particular coordinated group of the left controls the media. So no matter what we do, it's like you're shouting from a well. Even when people try to get together to try to get a message out, try to get to and it's absolutely true that a lot of these groups, but why do they not know about each other? They don't know about each other because the general media is not picking them up or saying anything about them or spreading what they're doing. And they're actually dampening. Freeman was talking about the
Gosnell movie.
Why don't you go ahead and say a bit about it?
Okay, so I know it was a crowd-funded movie. I think they raised like a $2 million budget. Very well done movie. I went and saw it, I think this last Tuesday. And it's about the trial of Gosnell, who was an abortion doctor that I know one day.
Written by Andrew Klavan.
Yeah, yes. Written by Andrew Klavan, who my husband.
Yeah, the movie was based off of the book that he wrote, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you guys can help me out with the details of the making. But I went and saw it, and it's pretty horrific what the guy did. Though it's interesting looking at it now because this happened. Kind of started in the earlier 2000s. I think the trial happened around 2013, if I remember. And it was an abortionist doctor. He had a really disgusting run clinic where it was untrained people, cats everywhere. There were bags of bodies everywhere. And the movie did a great job because at the end, the credits, they had actual pictures from the investigation. And the pictures were exactly like how they had done the movie. So they did really good recreating everything and really good with the pacing, having the characters. And you're like, from the very beginning, I could kind of feel my heart racing just following the investigation of them tracking down this one person and then trying to get in, FBI coming, this and that. But this Gosnell guy, he was the only doctor there, had a bunch of untrained nurses, offered abortions past the 24-week limit. And when a lot of times the babies would be born alive, and he would snip the back of their neck. And he kept like feet in jars and stuff. But he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. It was really interesting watching as they do the trial and his lawyer talking and the other people talking. It was just a really well done movie. And it wasn't like in the movie, they say when they're going into the trial that this isn't about abortion. This is about what this doctor is doing. And
you gotta wonder, why are they trying to not? I mean, where are they in their mind that they think they have to protect even this guy? That they don't want this to come out? Are they just too terrified that the world
I mean,
will
the guy's in
turn on
jail
them?
right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this happened just like maybe not even 10 years ago or so.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing is, the movie is really well done, and it's not some sort of big message thing about, oh, abortion's bad. The movie really lets you decide your own opinion about abortion, but it's interesting looking at it now, especially since abortion's been so much more pushed and afterbirth abortions and everything. And like, there's a scene where there's a witness at the stand. She's an abortionist doctor, and she's talking about how they run their facility. It's much like it's to code, it's clean, and they do everything. And like, one of the big things in the trial for Gosnell was that he was snipping the back of the infants' heads and killing them. Like, they're snipping their spinal cord, and everyone's horrified at that. And then the lawyer guy who's having to defend Gosnell starts asking the other abortionist doctor questions like, okay, how do you do the procedure? You use these tools. And he has a sonogram, and he's pointing. He's like, okay, so you do this, you inject, like, you got to inject the heart and everything. And he's saying, like, if the baby, like, if something happens, or, well, they got to suck out the brains. That's what it was. He was like, okay, so you do this, and they got to suck out the brains. And so you insert it where? And she was like, there. And she kind of pointed to the back of the neck. And he's like, okay. Now, what if, just say a baby was born, and what would you do? And she said, well, we would do comfort and care or something, which is basically just wrapping the baby up, keeping it warm until it eventually passes away. And the lawyer makes a comment right at the end that's like, well, don't you think it would be more humane if you went ahead and, snipped it instead of letting it slowly die? And then, of course, everyone's like, order the court and objection and stuff. But it has moments like that. It really illustrates, what abortion is, but it focuses on the trial and this guy and what he did, which was pretty bad. And so the movie itself is really well done. The actors, the pacing and everything's it's a really good movie, very powerful. I didn't even listen to the radio when I got in the car. I was also the youngest one there. I went on like a Tuesday around 4:30, and it was a handful of other middle-aged or couples that were there. There's maybe like 20 people or something. And they had heard about it on, I guess, the Christian radios, and they said, I guess, enough people had called that particular theater to make sure it was shown. So I didn't have any trouble getting in. But that's the thing is, for some reason, there's so many. I was reading an article on the Daily Wire that was talking about it. The numbers have been doing really well. The movie's doing really well. And it's only had like 300 or so theaters playing it, but 100 theaters have dropped out, and it's way too suspicious. And it seems like, they've had ads blocked on Facebook. They've had, the outside media trying to like hush it or push it down, just because it's about a guy who was an abortionist doctor and did these crimes.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't. It really doesn't really try and persuade you at all. It's a really well done movie, and it just showcases it.
Part of what's going on, of course, is that this force on the left are just bullies. Why does a theater drop out when a movie's making money? Only because they get threatened by people who are going to protest or complain, and they don't. It's too much. Yeah. They don't want to.
And this the people that did this, I forget the name. But the same people that did this movie did one about Obama, and they had some resistance when they had that one showing, but nothing quite like they're having with this Gosnell movie. Which, anyway, hopefully, I can't wait for the CD to come out because I need to get that. It's something that a teenager, if they're up for the subject, could watch. It does it from the angle of the investigation and the people, and it has some and the mother or the other detective is a mother, and so you see her trying to deal with this whole case, and she has a family. So there's also a little bit of humor here and there, like when the investigation first is starting, and Woody, I think, is the second detective, and he's asking her these questions about abortions, or like, what's the limit? And she's like, I have 5 kids. What do I know about abortion? And it's a good movie, so I recommend everyone see it, just to see this case and to support these people, because they did an excellent job, and it was completely crowdfunded, like the most successful crowdfunding I think ever.
So the government, it came out, had the FDA had a contract to buy fresh aborted baby parts. And I believe I heard that Trump shut that down in the last month or so. They're not going to do
I
that.
heard something about that too.
And then another thing on a kind of related subject is that apparently, I mean, this sounds like it's fantasy and it's from our world, but it's not. It's from the left. There's a group of people who actually consider themselves witches meeting today at a bookstore in New York, I think, to try to curse the new Supreme Court justice. So
Yes.
I don't know what part, but some part of the Catholic Church called for a day of fasting and prayer today. So to counter, they use the powers of light against the powers of darkness. But I was sitting there going, "What a strange world!" So we live in a world where, so the general public is convinced that magic does nothing, but these people think it works well enough that they're willing to go do it. And they're claiming publicly that they're trying to cause harm to somebody, but there isn't any kind of law that can be used to stop them because it's not recognized as a real thing, But what about the fact that they themselves think it's real? It just seems really strange to be announcing openly that you're going to do something that you believe is going to cause harm to other human beings. I don't know. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, maybe since people don't believe in it, they think they're just spouting nonsense and just kind of shrug and be like, oh, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Let the crazy people do their thing, sort of.
I'm seeing a lot more like cultists and stuff like that surrounding Planned Parenthood. If there isn't occultic things, is
well, look at it this way.
Well, hold on though.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like there's a woman who acts as a doula, which is apparently a type of
midwife.
It's like a midwife.
Yeah. Right, for abortion, abortion choosers. And she's like, blah, blah, blah. And then I see at the end of the article, yes, and you do occult practices while doing this sometimes. And it's like, what? There's articles I've been discovering that talk about how blood from younger people put into old people might help rejuvenate them. I'm seeing all kinds of stuff out there. It's coming out, and it really does bother me that, it's like being a Protestant, we don't really care about witches. But it's also one of those things, it's like, guys, it's like when I did I talked about the Netflix thing, and I said, guys, Big Mouth season 2 has naked children in it. It had it before, but I didn't notice it before. We probably should cancel Netflix. Like we just should probably stop giving Satan our money, sort of thing. And I'm being hyperbolic for my amusement's sake, but it's a very real thing. Like why give people who hate you money? And I'm not talking about just Intel did something stupid with some feminist get women into attack. I'm talking like
something more directly that you children. Yeah, like something like with the Netflix thing. We actually canceled ours after they had a commercial that was basically promoting what's the word when you like an open relationship or stuff like that. Do you remember that one?
Yeah,
when that kind of went around where it was the premise was, you're watching the Netflix show that we watched together without me, and she's like, oh, well, you can watch it with like anyone, and it was very clearly insinuating that's like, oh, well, I know we're in a relationship, but like I can still sleep around, and like the guy was left in the background, kind of like flabbergasted. And at that point, especially the love, he was like, I'm done with it. Like, there's plenty of other entertainment you can find, something that's very directly attacking families or attacking children that the company themselves is doing. But it's also another thing I've been thinking is, okay, we can very clearly see that there's certain things that are inherently bad and should not be promoted, like the big mouth thing with children. Like that's something that has been very blurred, but should be understood as inherently bad and evil. Is you don't do that kind of thing and support that kind of thing. But then I'm wondering what people on the other side, are they thinking? Because there's a difference between the morals and just your political views. Are they in like, are they so against us in so many of our political views because they take it as a moral thing when it's just a view thing?
I can explain this. They don't view it as having any moral component. They just view it as entertainment. When I posted it to the CLFA back when it was a thing, people went shrug, and one person went, well, it's a private company, they can do what they want, because I had forgotten that libertarians are libertarian up until the point they actually have to sacrifice things for something other than themselves. And so it's like, no, that was the reaction to it. Why don't people do something? We need to do this. We need to do that. Hey, guys, let's boycott Netflix. Like, it's promoting child nudity. It's promoting open relationships. It's promoting abortions. It's really just anti everything they want. We want. And Netflix is supporting it. It's kind of going down the drain. That is unsustainable. Let's just help it, shove it down early.
I think part of the issue is that our whole culture for about, I don't know, at least as long as I've been in it, there's been this whole attitude of part of tolerance, which was considered a virtue, was the idea that you would tolerate, that you just be tolerant of anything. You say, yeah, it's okay if you do your thing or blah, blah, blah. And nobody saw there be any, they just didn't see the harm in it, And I noticed, for instance, that I've noticed recently that nearly all sorts of, all the things that we would have normally done to protect our culture, we got talked into not doing, into being casual about. Now the left is doing all those same things that in the earlier period before the 1950s, the right used to do, and they're doing it to protect immorality. They're using exactly the same attitude, the same behaviors, the same type of, peer pressure. They're trying to shun people the way they did in the Victorian age, but it's all impuritans. They're doing it
They have moral relativism, and so since they have no grounding in an authority outside of themselves or a moral standard, since it's fluid to them, then they've now picked what they've decided is immoral.
Right, but they've moved beyond moral relativism to actually supporting immorality. You're supposed to be
that's what I mean.
Only because I remember moral relativism when it first got started, and it was actually not hypocritical. People were, kind of willing. Okay, if you showed them there was a contradiction, and that that you would have to put Christianity up next to something else, they would go for it. They'd be like, okay, I guess you're right. But now, no, they're only willing to support these ideas if they are destructive to Christianity, to society, to family, to life.
Yeah, they've decided for themselves what's moral and not moral, so they've made up their own standard now. Since once you enter into that realm of insanity where you aren't actually connected to reality, because I've been looking into a lot of like modernism. It really started. It took hold a lot at the turn of last century, like 1800s, 1900s, where people started to be like, oh, we've evolved, we're better, like we are our own deciders of everything. And we move beyond. And then the world wars happened, that kind of knocked it down a bit. But its roots have gone back for a couple hundred years, where the Abuse of Power, Abuse of Language by, I forget his name, is a really good book. But just the way people for so long have been being guided and disconnected with reality. It's an attack from the powers of darkness, slowly getting people to move away and not have any sort of grounds in reality, and making it up for themselves has now led us to where people have done that. And then now, of course, if you're being taken away from reality, that's the devil's realm, and so he'll take it and use it to attack what is grounded in reality.
I'm a big fan of Francis Schaeffer, and he has a book called "Then How Should We Then Live," which I recommend everybody if they're looking for a connection between art and culture. over the years. What's valued by a culture will come out in their art. Now, we had a time when the art and culture was kind of separate. However, the grand sort of like morality of the culture, the push towards whatever works for you, man, around the 1960s, around the baby boomers and all that jazz, came out in their atonal, terrible, amoral art. So that when, by the time we get to here, and we're kind of waking up to it, like we're finally able, we're not just like philosophers observing the iceberg coming in. The iceberg has hit us hard. We're sinking. We're kind of having to grasp it again. We're kind of having to say that this is what it is. And I've noticed that with a lot of kind of the author people, if they're not an out and out Christian, boldly so, oftentimes they'll give in to the moral relativism. I've got my vices. My vices are evil. However, people will try to justify their vices, or they'll say I'm a contrarian, or they'll which is just the utter moral cowardice of being a contrarian drives me utterly crazy. Or they'll say, well, yes, Big Mouth reminds me of my puberty, which was actually posted on one of my Facebook posts by an author who I've met, and all these other things. And it's like, guys, you're missing it. It's not that these pieces of art, these boycotts, these these attacks on us are not directed. They are directed. It's that we're kind of stuck fighting the war, and just earning some money for yourselves isn't doing it. Like, if you say, well, I've got mine, well, this is like my childhood, this is like this, I'm a contrarian, so I don't agree with any of this. It's almost as bad as being a centrist. It's taking a fight somebody's trying to sort of get moving and saying, you know what, no. Banner of the Blue Boar has a great comment here. Libertarians are forever doomed to be defeated by non-libertarians. And of course, I'm tripping over my own tongue here, but it's a very real thing. If you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, to sacrifice for it, then there's not going to be a place for you, because you'll get the bullet too. Like, people who say, well, I put money before my art. I don't like first off, the best people who say I focus on the money when I'm writing my art, are also writing really great books that I just love to read. Their art has propelled them into the fame and the money and all that jazz. But then I see people who, I'm kind of lost track, haven't I? Who don't do it, and they're saying, well, my art is submitted to my money. They're not fighting the culture war. They're not creating counter art. So being a libertarian, having these morals or beliefs or non-aggression principles, which have been violated since time immemorial anyway, doesn't help them. Doesn't bring them anywhere. Doesn't help us. Doesn't help me. Doesn't help the people who want to see positive change. It'll just keep sinking.
Well, if I can make a personal plug, a very, very wise and intelligent author wrote a very, very good article on Monday on the Castalia House blog about this specific issue. Writing stories and making money and working hard, and what value people get from stories. So that is a good article you might go read.
And it was a good article. It's just that I view some people as taking it too far the other way. They decide, well, military science fiction is big. I will write military science fiction, even though.
Josh, you should get John to talk about this, because this is reminding me of his Golden Book article he wrote once.
And I agree.
Is unfortunately out buying something.
Yeah, and I at no point will I fight you on this, Daddy Warpy. But it's like, if I decided to say I will write military science fiction, I'm sure like 5 pages in, somebody's going to kick in my door and say, soldiers don't talk like this. this isn't this. You clearly have never been in the Army. And it's like, okay, you got me. It wouldn't be the same quality of art if I went for just what's popular. And I think that...
Yeah, I think there's a balance there. I think some people come at writing from a very professional point of view, and they can do that without any problem. They can just pick up a new subject. Some people come at it from I've got this inspiration and I'd like to put it down, and there's nothing you can do if you're in that category. You write that, it sells or it doesn't. And most authors are somewhere in between. They can move into a range that's popular that fits what they can do, but they're not going to make any. I mean, if you're not a guy who gets military science fiction, you're not going to be one of the guys who makes money in that field, even if it's making money. So you need to look for where it is that there's an opening, but there's an opening that you fit with, if you know what I mean.
And there's also, you don't want to be someone that's like, oh, I have this one inspiration, I'm going to take 10 years to write it. You want to write what you know you can write well, and you want to be able to write what you need to write, but at the same time keep your readers in mind that you're writing this for someone to read and enjoy and hopefully find some fans or market in that. So the balance of writing to be able to sell your book, writing something entertaining and something fun that someone will want to read, but then not just trying to follow whatever fad's going on. Because by the time a fad has come about and you write it, the fad will probably be overplayed by the time you actually get it out.
That used to be true, and it's not exactly true anymore.
Oh, really?
It used to be true, and that's what all the guys who publish in traditional will tell you, and they're absolutely right. It takes like 2 years to get your book out in traditional publishing, so by the time you write the fad book, the fad's over.
But if you can write at the speed of pulp and publish it really fast,
book in a month, which a lot of guys are doing nowadays.
Mm-hmm. But if you're not a good author and you can't write it that fast, by the time, like, you got to be good enough to be able to jump in that market right away.
I think you have to kind of get a hang for what kind of author you are, and then try to hit it where you can. I mean, if you can do, super fast writing, that's great, and that's a really good way of making money nowadays. If you can't, you have to look at what you can do. I'm not saying that some people can't learn or improve, but I'm also saying that, for some people, you don't want to
try and jump into that as a novice and expect it to really work.
Right. Well, there are some people who, in their whole life, they write one book, and the fact that they get that one book out is from their point of view, a major achievement, and that's really wonderful. It's not going to make it's not a living making thing in the modern day, but it's still a great achievement from a personal point of view. So trying to go from that to making a living, we have to try to. It's like, I don't know. It's like you have to move both towards what you can do and towards what's out there, and you're trying to find a balance. What are you saying?
Here's something that's confused me for a long time now, or at least the last couple of years, and it really honestly befuddles me, because I see something that seems so immediately apparent and clear to me, and it seems like a lot of people don't see the same thing I see, and I'm left wondering where the disconnect is. I could look at a movie, and I'm using movies as an example. It also applies to novels. And I can look at a movie and say, this movie was clearly written to be a blockbuster. It was clearly written to be audience-pleasing and to make as much money as possible. This movie was clearly written because of some, private obsession or whatever, and it's not a movie that's intended to make money. It's a movie that's intended to be, quote-unquote, art. It's a movie that's not intended to be seen by a wide audience because wide audience won't like it, and so it's not going to make any money. It will lose money probably. And then I take that same notion into books, and I could look at a book and say, okay, well, this particular book isn't written to be broadly popular or enjoyed because it's really for whatever reason. And then I'll look at another book and say, okay, whether or not the author succeeded in making a lot of money, or whether or not they're skilled enough to have, do it right now, and you can increase your skill and make more money later, that's fine. It is apparent to me that one book is written with the notion of bringing the audience in and entertaining them, and the other book is written for completely different reasons. Those aren't necessarily bad. I'm not
right. No, I think you're right. And I'll say that I bet you that all of us, or if not all of us, at least out of a group, most people will probably name 1 or 2 books that are in that category that they were never widely read that made a huge impression on us personally.
Yes.
They were important to us, even though they're not a big, book. And yet, on the other hand, there are things that you don't need to make you can't really make a career of writing books that are that kind of book. If you want to be a career, you have to make the wider, spread the joy, get paid type of life.
I heard someone describe the Coen brothers' career that way, that they'll do one large audience-pleasing movie to get the funds to then do their and then follow up with their artsy films. And if you look at their release schedule, you'll see an alternation like that.
That's a line from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. The thing that befuddles me is that I say that, and I get people who tell me either they don't know what is commercially popular, or they don't see that. They say, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can say this book wasn't written to make money. They literally can't look at a work and think, oh yeah, obviously this was not written to be popular to the audience. And going at it from a different direction as writers, I see a lot of writers who want to be popularly successful, but seem to be unable to take the step back of looking at their own work and saying, oh, well, here are some aspects of my work. Here are some things I prefer as a writer or I've gotten used to that make my work not as appealing commercially, and look at maybe changing that.
I can tell you as a writer, but also an editor and a writing teacher, a lot of writers would love to do that, and they don't see. As writers, it's hard to see what you're not doing well. And I speak both for myself and for other people. It's just hard to see it because you're not, it's the thing you already don't know how to do, if you know what I mean. So sometimes, as I've gone along, I know I'm not good at certain things and I work towards getting better at them. So there's that. But there's also things that a person's not doing well. They have no idea what they are, and so that's part of the problem is a lot of them would like to know what it is that they need to do to improve, but they don't know. They're just not seeing it.
Like I know I need to discipline myself better, and I'm working hard to sort of structure my life better around writing versus any of the other things that I'm
Just
doing.
wait till wedding planning comes in. It's really hard to write and wedding plan and travel at the same time.
That sounds like it probably won't be my problem in the relationship. But just
working on games.
Right?
Yep.
That's what I was doing this morning, and it was just terrible. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I know that really what I need to do is I need to hit pulp speed. Once I hit pulp speed, I'll be able to finish my novel Cyber Gothic, which I'm hoping will be a big hit in the Gothic and the cyberpunk community. Probably won't, but hey, dreams. But then, I'll go back to the Jasper Silver books. I know what I'm going to do with the first book. I know what I'm going to do with the second and third book, and I'm going to write those, and I'm going to start doing the trilogy thing that seems to be very successful for the binge reading population. But I also have a whole
format.
Sorry?
That's always been my favorite format. Maybe it's just because I would read a lot of the Wrights books, and they tend to have trilogies of books, and so it's like you get to have a good bit of the story, but you don't have a super long series to follow.
But this is going to be a super long series. But
this is Rachel Griffin. I don't mind. Maybe it's I really, honestly though, I haven't had many super long series to follow. For whatever reasons, I've mostly ended up reading trilogies.
Is this where we bring up StarQuest?
So the reorganizing of the background for StarQuest is nearly done, and
oh really?
Trying to get.
I didn't know it was starting again.
Yeah, well, he's been working on it all along. It was Nate's fault. Can I blame you, Nate?
Totally, I take responsibility. Come at me.
So John had started it, and Nate was working on the card game, which when we get to the crowdsourcing thing, we're going to try to put up the card game too. And he casually asked, "Oh, so you have 4 villains? Are you gonna have a book for each one of them?" And John and I looked at each other and we're like, "We've totally wrongly organized this story."
Oh no!
We had to pull the whole thing apart, and John's coming up with something that's much pulpier, much more action. Yeah, well, it was Nate's comment. It was a comment. It was somebody on John's blog who had made a comment, and I realized that and we were talking about serials one day, and so we started going, wait, that's what's missing. That's what Star Wars has that a lot of these other things don't have. It's that sense of fun, serial-like pulpiness.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is being revamped, and hopefully, when John's done with the notes, we'll have something that we can share. Because one of our hopes is that we could get a couple other authors involved, kind of like Cole and Patch, not necessarily in the same trilogy or quadrilogy, but in the whole background,
Yeah.
so that we could have stuff coming out from more than one person. So we're hoping that will happen.
Well, I already figured y'all could do a group of authors doing a short story collection.
We could do that too.
Tying into
we were
it.
actually hoping to get. I had a couple authors kind of on the hook for possibly writing novels, and then we'd get the information together. So now we're gonna have to try again, and present it to whoever's interested once we get it organized. But our hope is that that we could make something where you could have a number of different people contributing to it, and just make it fun. Have some of the fun of Star Warsy type fun, and have some of the qualities that we loved in Star Wars that are not in the current Star Wars available in a story background. And it'd be a little bit different from Galaxy's Edge, which is great, and but it's more MILF sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
So this, we're trying to get it to be a little bit more pulpy, like kind of the other side of Star Wars, if you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So, space pirates and
I think where Galaxy's Edge misses out that is a prime opening for other competitors is that it is, for various reasons, and I'm not criticizing for this, it lacks good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
It lacks.
I just got to the third or I think wait, what book am I on? I forget the name of it. I know I just got to one where stuff's. I love it. I love it a lot. But yeah, I've got to a point where it's kind of like, oh well, who do I actually want to root for now?
Yeah.
I think is it the fourth or the third one?
The original Star Wars had that really strong black-white quality of the old serials.
Yes.
And so we're trying to go to something more like that. Not that there can't be some, beauty. And this isn't meant in no way to be a criticism of Galaxy's Edge. I think it just hits the ball out of the park for what it's doing. But what we're doing is trying to hit a slightly different part of the storytelling.
I think what's happening is
genre related to Star Wars than what they're doing, which is good for both.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like, since Star Wars, so many people have given up, and it's gotten so wonky. I think it's great that people are taking and making kind of. I feel like these are sort of tributes to Star Wars, taking the parts of Star Wars we like and developing. And I think the more well done universes, doing different aspects and having that kind of flavor, and so fans can find what they like and still have that fun that we had with Star Wars, but in different universes.
Yeah, well, I mean, they call it Star Wars, not Star Wars.
Yeah,
and I think that's an amusing way. And so Star Quest is also a Star Wars, not Star Wars project, but it has a very its own milieu, and it has all these crazy alien races that John's made up that will be coming on stage, and kind of is background stuff, but and hopefully it'll be fun. And we're just trying to make it fun. We're trying to make it fun in a way that captures some of what we personally find fun in Star Wars, which may or may not be what somebody else is looking for, but we're trying to capture some of that and put it out there for, people to enjoy. And, I think it won't be the same type of fun as Galaxy's Edge, but that's good, because that just means, you don't need the same thing twice. You want this over here and that over there, and for them both to, be fun.
Yeah.
So, but we're definitely inspired by Galaxy's Edge, and we got some, the Nick kindly took some time to give us some advice about how to approach some of it.
I tried to get Nick to come to the wedding, but unfortunately he was busy that weekend.
Oh, too bad.
I know.
That would have been fun. He and his wife are both just delightful.
They're great. He said he loved me, though. In a message, he said he loved me, and I will always remember and cherish that.
Cherish that. You can hold it up at the wedding as proof, that you are dearly loved by Nicole.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe we'll get all the authors together for like a convention / baptism of the first kid.
That would be really funny.
If I was going to make a suggestion, to authors. In addition to improving your skill as an author, in addition to improving your skill at writing and addressing weaknesses and whatever whatever you see as being weaknesses or whatever your editors tell you that you're weak at, set that aside. I would recommend that if you want to have an impact on the culture, you have to have people read your work. And the more people who read your work, the bigger an impact potentially you can have. Now, I happen to be focused on something different, which I explained in the article. I'm not going to go back on that. But my suggestion is then to them is that look at your strengths and your weaknesses and look at what you either want or have learned to think you should want in your writing, in the fiction you write, and try to practice and aim your work at a more to appeal to a broader audience, however you may define that, whatever you can see. One of the things I have found in myself and other people is that you have been given a lot of writing advice or read a lot of writing advice that will tell you how to do certain things or tell you some things that you're going to need to do. And so part of the time while you're writing, you may be spending time intellectually matching the characters and the story and whatever to some abstract intellectual concept. Now, those abstract intellectual concepts may be good in and of themselves. They may be accurate in and of themselves. But I have generally found that the more time you spend trying to bend your writing to some kind of checklist, the worse writing you will produce. And let me just give a couple of examples. Those of you who Christians may have very strong feelings about morality and you feel guilty about writing a book that you think might possibly violate Christian morality in some way, whatever. Maybe you think it's too violent or whatever. And I would commend to you Jesus's advice that the children of light are very often unwise in worldly matters, and that being wise in matters of this world is a powerful tool. Be wise in matters of this world, but righteous in matters of the gospel. It's a powerful tool. Look at that scripture and think about it and ask yourself, well, am I just feeling guilty over something that isn't really actually a problem? Is this something I shouldn't be worrying about? Or can I do the thing I feel like I should do in a slightly different way to where I won't feel guilty about it? Now, some other things you may have been told is, oh, here's how men think and here's how women think. And so you've got a list of characteristics you think that have to be in place for men and have to be in place for women. My recommendation to you is whatever that list is, tear it out. Tear it out and throw it away. Some of you who read Vox Day's blogs may be familiar with his alpha, beta, gamma, delta, gamma, whatever. And you write your books, or you have that in mind when you're writing. My recommendation to you is whether it's accurate or not is describing the real world doesn't matter.
Can I make a quick point about that?
Sure.
So yeah, you want to write your characters. You want whatever your characters need. But sometimes, as happened last year, is you're writing a character and it just doesn't seem right. And so you hand it to another writer who happens to be the same sex as the character you're writing and tell them to completely to hold no mercy and tear it apart and write. Jaja, you remember this, right? Yes. And so I had a small I forget what age I'd had at that time, but I had a character in a short story trying to write. I think it was the Mars short story. Yeah, and it wasn't working very well, and I was at the rights, and so I gave it to John to look over. I'm like, hey, John, can you help me with this? How would a guy in this situation probably think? And so he kind of over exaggerated it, but it was kind of brutal, but it was really funny, and it got me to. It helped a lot with that character because as a girl, most of the time, what was I doing? I was making the character internalize things too much. His reactions were all internal when his reactions need to be external for a young boy to do.
So
exactly, and I agree definitely with what Daddy Warpig's saying that
don't try and follow a chart, but if you need to, seek help from someone else that might understand the perspective.
Anything that has, I'm not talking about writing advice about like how to get a plot to work. I'm talking about anything that has like a checklist, or this is what works, or this is what's selling, or usually if you stories need to be organic. The good ones are organic. And while there might be some folks out there who can make a high, well-selling story out of something like that, usually you don't get that. What you get is something that doesn't live up to what you'd like, because you're trying to use somebody else's inspiration, not something that's coming from within.
Every writer has learned what the world is around them. You have seen how people act. And whether or not you realize it, you have those ideas and truths inside you. And what you have to do, whether it's accurate or not to quote unquote reality, and I want to directly address it in just half a sec, you have to strip away all of the artificial constraints that are getting in the way of you telling a story about the world that you think really exists. You will never be able to tell a story better than you do when you tell a story that reflects what you think the world really is. Whether your ideas are right or wrong, you have a unique voice, you have a unique point of view, and you need to tell stories that reflect how the world really exists in your mind and in your heart, and throw away.
Don't be an NPC.
Checklists. Throw away all of the things that other people have told you need as far as strong woman characters or masculine male characters, whatever they are, whether they're accurate or not, or good or bad. You have to write according to what you see the world as being. And my final point is this: do not let the mirage of realism misdirect you when writing a novel. You are not writing real people. You are writing characters in a story. And characters in a story are very often unrealistic. And it is because they're unrealistic that people love them, because they're larger than life, because they're not realistic. Do not look at realism as your guiding star. It is not the best way to plan your novel. You're telling a story. You're writing characters, not real people. Make your characters as interesting and compelling as possible, and make your story as honest as possible, and show a great deal of integrity to how you see the world, because that's where the truth of a story, that's where the motivation of a story will come through. Okay,
Yeah, definitely. I
call it the nobody's average rule.
Yeah, you gotta be able for the readers to relate or connect to characters in some way, but you also, you want characters that are interesting, that you'll remember, that you can talk about or be inspired by. You don't want to read about. You could read about people on Facebook that are just like you and be entertained, and or you could read a story about a character that's developed and you can relate to on some level, but also look up to in some level because they're a character.
Or, as I like to use as an example, I mean, say we take men and establish that, like, their average height is, I'll make up a number, 5'10" or whatever. Man, nobody would find nobody would find a book realistic if in that book or story every man in there is exactly 5'10". You know, some are going to be tall, some are going to be short. So just because there are averages of a group, there will still be variances within that. So don't be afraid to have your characters drift off from what may be realistic, because that's the way real people are.
I doubt there's anyone that's like Siggy. There are probably very few people that are like Siggy.
Well, some characters are exaggerations of what might be real. But I was going to say, that I'm sorry, the Ziggy thing just blew out of my mind what I was going to say. You guys go on.
Siggy does that. Siggy does that.
It's so cute.
I'm so glad he finally got to beat up some boys, though.
Yes.
I'm still reading the fourth
one. It's really nice for him. I was showing just the scarf you made yesterday, and he's like, I said, something about lucky. He's like, is that your lucky scarf? And I'm like, don't you know? And he said he wasn't there at LibertyCon, so he didn't know. This is a scarf that looks like Lucky the Dragon. That's
right.
Anyway, I'll get it eventually. Wait for me. So anyway, but what I was going to say is that there's a difference between the type of realism where a character totally acts like a man rather than a woman, or a woman rather than a man, and you're trying to, like, like what we were talking about earlier with the Mars story, and you want to get a more of a reflection of the real, and the type of realism where you're trying to make something what you claiming is real, but you really mean is fitting in a particular box of what particularly is the way something seems right now. You understand what I'm saying? You do want your women to seem like women and not like something else, but you don't need them all to be feminine. Some can be, some can be tomboys, some could be ultra feminine, feminine. You know what I mean? You can have a range, but you want your range to reflect reality in some way. So because you can mess up in both directions if you understand.
Yeah, you gotta have suspension of belief or suspension of disbelief.
You can forget that retrograde is only from the perspective of the Earth.
Right. Exactly. I was on a panel at Dragon Con, and I made a comment about how I really like masculine guys. I like the guys to act like boys. It's one of the things I like about writing the series I write. A lot of the dialogue for the male characters were actually written by Mark or John or someone else, so the characters come off as acting like guys. And in a lot of YA and a lot of romances, the guys don't act like men at all. And the writer sitting next to me said, "Oh, she doesn't agree. She likes to have her men a little effeminate and her women a little masculine." And I thought, all this time, I thought it was just bad writing. I didn't know someone was doing it on purpose.
No, some of it's still bad writing. Don't beat yourself.
No, I mean most of it's bad writing. Sorry, you're taking it the opposite of what I meant. I thought this was such a bad writing thing that it never occurred to me that someone would be voluntarily writing badly.
Sweet Joshy.
That somebody would on purpose be trying to make the characters not be as good as they could be. Anyway.
I want to step in real quick before we take off. Apparently, some people took an offhanded teasing comment of mine as being some kind of being a serious accusation. I have trouble saying that because I'm Daddy Warpig. You have to know.
I think particularly online, it's just hard for people to tell sometimes what's serious and what's not. And I noticed, for instance, within a circle of people, like we know you, so we know you, or you guys know me. Within a circle where people know each other, they usually know what tone to read something in, most of the time. But if you're outside the circle and you don't know the person, that's when I think these things really get into trouble, If you're somebody, you pick it up and you just don't, know what the person normally is like, then people do really tend to take things too seriously. But I don't know. I think taking things too seriously is one of the major problems right now. At least it's what the
things that should be taken seriously are not taken seriously, right. And the things that shouldn't be taken seriously are taken seriously.
It was just a gentle jibe. It was not a serious accusation.
What? Wait, what happened exactly? Was it on the chat, like the live chat over here just now, or?
I don't know. He didn't say what it was. He just said that it happened.
Yeah, it's don't worry about it. As far as I'm concerned, it'll be over the second the two of them talk. He should have, I'll say, Anthony should have shown up. He has a lot of opinions about this, and even though he might not know every minutia, it's not necessary. At this point in time, we know we're being attacked. We know who's attacking us. Therefore, don't worry about being slightly wrong where the coordinates of the artillery strikes are striking. The gas will come soon for us all, I'm sure. But it's that sort of infighting. I don't want to infight. I don't like drama. I don't like living a dramatic life. But it's like
we only like writing about it.
I only like writing about it. And even then, like, I don't have much
frustrating.
personal drama compared to like some authors. Like in Sheik of Mars, there's no real personal drama between the main character and his kidnapped bride. They have one fight, and it's over whether or not she should slay herself if she's captured again. And of course, he's very much against it because he went through all the trouble of dragging her from the castle. You know, and it's more humor than it is actual drama. The drama is between the main character and the systems and the villain and all that jazz and the madness of the prince than anything else. But it's like I want to, like, sometimes when I go on Facebook or when I interact with them, especially libertarians or people who are unwilling to put their money where their morals are. They're real morals, not like what they say they are. It just sort of drives me crazy. It's like, I don't want to call you out. I don't want to like show up there, and it's like, dude, you're hurting the cause.
Yeah.
Because we don't have very many allies, and I don't want to like get into a series of internet drama fights. And then them going, well, who are you? You've published one book or something like that. And it's like, well, okay, you know,
I've
you
noticed
got
that
me.
now since Sad Puppies. There's a tremendous amount of. We had a group of people who were trying to kind of hold up against what's going on, and it fractured. Some of the people in it won't even speak to each other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so like, how in the world are we going to accomplish anything and stand up for something good if we spend all our time firing at each other? You take that same amount of frustration and put it only towards the things that you actually want to see shut down. The small differences between the guys who agree on the basics. I mean, it's like arguing about what color the curtains should be when the castle's under attack, you know? Castle destroyed, curtains no go, you know?
It's that almost very true Protestant joke, you know. Well, how the church split. Well, why they split? Well, they argued over the color of the carpets. One wanted it red, one wanted it blue, and the pastor wanted it gray. They kicked out the pastor, then split.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, actually, if I remember correctly, there was a massive split over a comma in the phrase "the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost." So that really happened in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could believe that.
It was a gigantic point of controversy in the.
Are you talking about the Orthodox Catholic split?
The filioque.
It was over a word, not a comma.
Okay.
And with things like that, the words and placement, they reflect a different view of reality. That's you can't really. It's like it's kind of a theology difference with the words and the commas. So it's slightly more than the car curtains.
Right, but the point is that we're wasting our time if we're attacking each other. And here's what I see that's particularly dangerous. We're all sitting here in the bottom of a well, and we're shouting, and we're trying to get someone to pay attention, and we're not getting a very big audience. And if you attack each other, the audience immediately dramatically expands. So if you want to get more people looking at your website, you attack each other, you get more reads. But you're not actually reaching a bigger audience on the outside for the most part. You're only doing long-term damage on your own side.
Because those people are going to leave as soon as the drama's over.
Well, not only are they going to leave, but now you have people who actually have bad feelings towards each other about whatever these arguments are, you see. And not all the time. Sometimes it's done in good fun. And then you kind of end up with nothing at the end, you know. And I'm not saying that, that hearing, sitting at the bottom of the well and not fighting each other is, obviously it feels like we're getting nowhere. But I think that the turning on each other method, I mean, it's okay to get a controversy going and have discussion between people who don't agree, about some issue that that where everybody kind of knows that it's in fun or it's done, it's not
done as an actual debate and not as an attack.
As a debate, right. But when it's an actual attack, I know almost no one who is active, who's on the right, who somebody else on the right doesn't hate. So it's really hard to get together to go do anything.
And that applies even to really small fry like me. And, it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did, but, okay. I guess that's life. To be fair, I do just hate people on to be funny.
But you know what I mean. I mean, it's hard to get.
And then not being in internet space and not face to face affects it a lot too.
I must say, one of the biggest hits to our side as right-leaning fantasy science fiction people was Milo leaving Breitbart, because we actually had a guy who was friendly to our cause who would put it on a paper that's not at the top level, but it was at least nationwide, worldwide notice.
Mm-hmm.
And when he stepped down, he also lost his platform. He also is no longer able to reach.
I saw one time where, like, online, I don't know, like, the political views exactly of whoever it was, but talking, and I think they had screenshotted a comment that Milo had made of, I think Milo was frustrated, and he's like saying that a lot of stuff that he's started or put a lot of work into, of all the money and time and his own safety he put into trying to do these the tours and talking at colleges and all the stuff that's happened to him and how much he worked, and he's kind of gone under a little bit, or under the radar, or isn't as known. And the people were like going on and they were buying into that he was a pedophile and different stuff. Like, they were totally buying all the lies about him and bashing him. And I could clearly see why Milo was frustrated, if that's the attitude that's turned to him now.
Milo, he tries to go out, and a lot of time he can't talk because the place he's going to talk gets attacked by the left, and they chicken out and they cancel. And this happened like for months at a time. But previously, when he had that newspaper mouthpiece, they just couldn't shut him up, you see?
Yeah.
And without it, he's he's still, out there, and he's still doing what he can, but he's not that different situation from the rest of us, which are things like where people, can get a place where they talk, but they're only really reaching a certain small audience, And, he may find another way around, but I didn't realize at the time how important that was to, whether it was Gamergate or whether it was, science fiction, or whether it was some of the other crazy things he was talking to. He was doing something really valuable for a whole area, including himself and including a lot of us, that I don't think any of us realized until he didn't have that, how valuable it had been,
If I can make an observation along a similar lines and proffer some advice to anybody who is willing to listen. We had a person who was part of the Pulp Revolution, who was very, very active in discussions, had a lot of impact on the way things were developing, and they got into a couple of fights on Twitter with some people that were completely unrelated to it. They were political, and then they got banned off Twitter, and then they dropped out. Because there was no way for them to communicate with the rest of the Pulp Revolution. So, my recommendation for people is this. Be canny and be wise in how you choose to engage people and the ways in which you choose to engage people. It is absolutely true that the left is looking for any excuse they can to kick you off the platform. However, you do not have to go out in your garage and spend 2 weeks manufacturing the excuse and then go right up to the leftist and hand it to them, okay?
Yeah.
You do not have to give them the excuse. So exercise some judgment about the manner in which you express yourself and the times and places you express yourself. And if there are arbitrarily rules imposed, work around them. Use judo. Use that against them. Learn what the implicit rules are and dodge.
To quote a book that we all know and love, be subtle as serpents and gentle as doves.
And if you do that, you won't get deplatformed and you can still have an influence. And I understand, I really, really do, the desire to be outspoken and bold and brash and walk right up to someone in a virtual sense and yell at them that they're being idiots and here's how they're wrong.
But we're behind enemy lines.
I get that. I do. But you can do that, and sooner or later you're going to get banned, or you can exercise some discretion, exercise some wisdom, exercise some gentleness and restraint, and continue to be effective. And it may be there comes a time in which you're genuinely asked to compromise a moral value. That's your judgment. At that point, you have to make the decision. But don't take being loud and brash and confrontational and deliberately offensive as being an absolute moral good.
Yeah. Well, there's I see that quite a bit with. I did have something to say about Milo real quick, though. It was my understanding that there was a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes at Breitbart, which would have meant either Milo sacrifice what he was trying to build and set up.
Oh, I'm not saying that he did anything wrong. I'm saying we didn't. I'm not saying it could have been different.
I didn't think you said that, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, I know that there's a whole bunch of shadow play going out there that we people who are small fry on the outside just don't see. But like he set up a bunch of things failed, partners left, people didn't pay the money that they promised to make. Books were canceled. I don't know even like an eighth of it. Because of course I wasn't there, and much of this was secret. I'm sure or not public rather.
And some of it was public. We know, if you were in a position to talk to someone who knew him or something, but just not. It just wasn't public in the sense of everywhere around where everybody could find it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think he been doing an amazing job of trying to do all the right things, and they've just been hitting him with both fists,
Yep, and like I've noticed, going back to connecting this to what Daddy Warpig said is that there's not a lot of people who's producing secondary content for our works that aren't on blogs, which is why I want to start the Reading Rainbow Emperor thing. And do it more and more as I get more comfortable with it, where I review conservative or whatever you call yourself, but bad thinkers by liberal standards books, and sort of talk about them, what's good about them, what's bad about them, and how it could be done better in the next time. Because if there's no point criticizing a book unless you unless you point that out. But it's like if I'm the only one with kind of the vision for it, and I'm trying to produce it out. I'm shooting out the emails when a new thing comes out. I'm creating this. I'm gonna when I get like 5 videos, I'm gonna put it on the BookTube Reddits to publicize it more. We need other people doing these sort of things. We need Milos, and we need people who are willing to review books. We need people who are willing to do this and that. Like, we don't have like the support groups that the liberals have innate, and it's not because the liberals will like popped out of the ground like some sort of myrmidons from the dragon's teeth, which I'm pleased that I made that connection myself. But it's because that when the time came to show your colors, they were already on the left side. So like most booktubers, I just can't stand, because they often review books I don't care about or just aren't relevant. Like Galatea doing her multiple book series as to why the Shadowhunter books by Cassandra Cain are bad is a great example of something that's good, like that needs to be put out there. But then I read or watch or whatever the other reviews from other people, and it's like I don't care. I don't like your tone of voice. I don't care about this drama. It's only a 10-minute review. How in the world can you properly break down this book in only 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And they'll go deeper and all that jazz. But like Milo getting kicked out by Breitbart, I do not think there's any sort of fair play in that, Alt Hero Q being kicked off by Indiegogo, there was certainly not a foul. There was certainly foul play.
Definitely.
And certainly the type of foul play that will probably, considering Vox's his personal viciousness, which is a virtue almost in this case, will lead to some very amusing legal proceedings, I'm sure, or with the blacklists and everything else like that. It's just going to keep going. Like, I want to upload my book reviews to BitChute, but I know that no one's going to see them. Therefore, I upload them to YouTube where nobody can see them, but at least it's on the bigger platform. And it just keeps going on and on and on until, I don't know, I figure something breaks, or I know that Trump has looking at YouTube and Facebook as monopolies, Google and Facebook, excuse me, as monopolies on his docket somewhere in his list of things to do.
Yeah.
So, I just know we need more of this, and I'll make it until somebody better comes along who can, do it better. And I hope there's somebody who can come along and do it better.
Or you'll just do it so much that you get good at it.
Oh, heaven forbid. But but yeah, it's part of it. Like, blogs are great. Daily blogging is great, but we need to be. I view the whole video thing as being sort of a new frontier that, to my knowledge, I'm the only one who's doing it outside of a live stream system. If anyone else is also making these videos, please send them to me, please.
Jason, talk to me later about that.
All right, well,
all right, guys, this has been great, and I'm really glad that we're getting back together and staying on top of the thing. But I think I have to go take care of my son.
So are we
tomorrow? We're talking about Indian movies.
Yes, tomorrow we're doing Bahubali.
So are we going to start
at what time?
3.
Don't worry about it. I'll send an email, but we'll probably do around 3 Central.
Okay, let's make sure I'll be at home and connected by then.
Well, I just say, I don't know if we wanted to get John. If we do want to get John, he has to leave for church at 4:30, so that would be 3:30 Central. So I don't know if we want to do a little earlier, or just do it without him, or have him say something right at the beginning, because he, I've also really enjoyed the movies, but we could, I don't know.
I just threw out 3 o'clock because that was the first number that goes into my head. My afternoon and evening for Sundays is free. But Daddy Warpig, you were about to say something?
Oh yeah. Were we as far as the Superversive group, were we solid on starting to do these, like, the bigger ones on Saturday once a month again?
Yeah, I think that was the plan. I definitely think that's a great idea.
Get back into the more regular roundtables.
Yeah.
I like, we said this originally, and I think it's a great idea. I like both having the larger roundtables where we chat, and I like the ones that, that Ben's been doing that are kind of themed, that are a little shorter. Yeah. And I think both of those, there's a place for them. Both of those are something worth doing,
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I think we should definitely.
I do regret not being able to sit in on a few more of the Sunday shows that I might have been able to contribute to. Unfortunately, that my schedule just doesn't allow it. But
I understand that.
I think they're good, and I think that we should continue doing them.
Thank you for saying so. I appreciate that quite a bit.
And keep in mind for scheduling, I mean, it's not like we couldn't all do something on a Tuesday night if we needed to. I mean, it's nice to have a regular schedule and try to do something every Sunday, stuff like that. I'm just saying, if there's a particular topic someone wants to discuss and we can't find the time normally, we can find the time and then post it. So just keep that in mind if there's something, you really want to get to and you're not there available at that particular time. All right, guys, I gotta go. Thank you so much.
All right, see a couple of you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, see you.
See ya.
A little bit. Bye.
Bye.
Well, let's see here. April, do you have any last words?
Beware la vaca malvada.
Okay.
The evil cow. That's me. I think we pretty much covered everything. I think we briefly mentioned the cracked.com article. It was a while ago, but it was still pretty funny, where the satire site couldn't recognize the satire of Forbidden Thoughts and had an article called the 7 unintentionally ridiculous things the alt-right is afraid of. And so I got to be alt-right and affiliated with Milo and some other, and called a bad person. So that was pretty fun.
And also, I hit BuzzFeed for She-Ra, the Princess of Power.
Yes.
A tweet I took like 2 minutes of thought into, and most of that was finding the pictures I wanted to put into it. And apparently it was really, really amazingly triggering and offensive. So
why were they triggered by it?
Well, they've got a new She-Ra cartoon coming out on Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's hideous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I said, okay, here is, their She-Ra. I said, this is not She-Ra. And then I had 2 examples of, like, the She-Ra I remember as a kid and also a piece of fan art. And that just really offended them. Oh, you want this and that. And they were all really, really vulgar. But
they always are.
But yeah, I got thousands of people coming from BuzzFeed to my Twitter. I'm just saying, go take a look at it. Like the
not on Twitter
article. Go take a look at the BuzzFeed article because it is it's hilarious, and I very much appreciated BuzzFeed deigning to condemn me by.
Have you ever noticed how much presumption they throw on everything?
Putting the link in the chat.
Ooh.
Oh, I also put in a link to a cosplayer who did She-Ra. She was quite beautiful, and I'm like, well,
there's that.
Yeah, here is exactly what
everyone's
Netflix doesn't want this to be.
Yeah. Oh no, I saw someone, I forget who it was, but they had a picture of like an anime girl, and then I think one of the people from like Big Mouth, and they're like, here's, trying to make.
Me.
That was you. What was it exactly you said? I can't remember.
Japan, hey, let's keep making our animation cuter and more beautiful and all that jazz, and then America's like, let's see how ugly we can make this thing.
I mean, look at Squirrel Girl.
That's not even the worst. And like, I know there's a whole bunch of things that we can crack open for comics, but like, as a guy who's like read Japanese comics for a while, it's like I can't get into American comics. It drives me crazy, which is why I mostly keep my hands off of it, especially after I didn't enjoy the Chicago Typewriter, which is a pity because I want to like it. I just haven't found what I like. Yeah. Either way, do you have anything else to say, Daddy Warpig?
No. I'm just thank everybody for tuning in.
Woo-hoo.
All right.
Have a good week.
It's your turn. Give us your last word.
I think he's done.
Okay. So guys, I'll finish this out. Like, I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't know if this is really there. I don't know if they need this. Guys, just do it. Like, we can't create our own systems unless there's systems to bounce off each other. One dude holding up a book in front of his terrible laptop camera and pointing out some things about it, whether he likes it or not, whether he recommends it, like I do in reading Rainbow Emperor, is just one dude. And guess what? I'm not a professional video editor. In fact, like, I was doing a free trial, and I have no clue where I'm going to edit my videos now. Not that I was really editing them in the first place. Like, just make it. Just do it. Anthony, I'm calling you out directly here. If you want to do a video on, like, Authority and Sheik of Mars, or if you want to do a video on this and the Broken Man, or Jake and the Dynamo, just make it. You guy listening there, make your podcast, make your video, and all that jazz. Like, we can't create our systems. We can't create self-supporting systems unless they're being made.
Yeah. I'll also point out Jason Rainey. He's tried over the years. He's tried lots of things like podcasts or little online magazines. He's always have an idea and at least tried it. And a lot of times they don't stick, but then sometimes you'll hit something, it'll stick, and you just keep working and keep going.
Absolutely, and eventually I'll hit that book series. I'm hoping it's Jasper Silver, but eventually I'll hit that book series that really takes off, or it'll be one of my random weird standalone novels that takes off. I don't know. Like that's in the hands of the Lord more than it's in my hands. But the point is, I will make a fantasy set in a star-lifting series of ring worlds around a dying star or whatever, with fairy queens and black knights and crusaders and all that jazz, because that's how, you know, that's the muse's dance right there. But I'm also taking Daddy Warpig's advice. But the thing is, I'm going to do it. I'm literally restructuring every part of my life so that I can do it. The struggle will never end.
Yeah.
And please, please, please join me in the struggle. Criticize my work. Fight me. Catch these hands.
Catch me outside.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry for that.
But do it. And I'm going to leave that as the final word. Just do it, because we're going to take Nike back, I'm sure. No.
Thank you, Shia LaBeouf.
Exactly.
Throw up that meme.
All right, guys.
This video brought to you by all the dank memes.